are now listening to the War Report Podcast Network.
Sooner Nation, welcome into another episode of Sooner Spotlight, your all-access pass for all things Oklahoma Sooners athletics. I'm your host, Josh Mahler. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at @RealJoshMahler. Go check me out over there for all updates on this show and so much more. We thank you all so much for all of the support that we've gotten so far. I want to give you a couple of quick updates. We do have Apple Podcast and Spotify. You can go check us out over there. We're uploaded on there now, so you can check us out if you prefer to listen. Maybe you're in the car driving to and from work and you can't check on YouTube to go and watch the video. We've got you over there, so please do us one quick favor. If you would, please go over there and follow us on Apple Podcast and Spotify and give us a 5-star review real quick. That's going to help us grow so much over there, and we thank you all so much so far. And if you haven't already on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. And go ahead and comment down below. We've been getting an overwhelming amount of comments and all kinds of support from you guys so far. So Sooner Nation, I truly didn't understand how great this fan base was until starting this podcast and having you guys support a small growing podcast like this as quickly as we have been growing. It's all huge thanks to you guys. So we do have Parker Thune on with us from OU Insider. He's all over. You can find him on X as well, so go check him out over there. I love following him on X, formerly known as Twitter, whatever you want to call it. I love following him over there and checking out all the stuff that he puts out on the Oklahoma Sooners, specifically all around college football. So go check him out over there. And he also has an opportunity to tell you guys a little bit more about OU Insider and what that is. It's an amazing platform. Go check it out. I'm going to drop that link down in the description as well. So Parker Thune, if you are an Oklahoma fan, you know who he is. He's well known. He's one of the best OU insiders that I know of. And so it was a huge honor to have Parker come on. We talked about Demarco Murray and his suspension, 1-game suspension against Tulane, how much that really matters for Oklahoma. Spoiler alert, not too much. And then we also get into the depth chart, some of the surprises, some of the exciting things to see on the depth chart. And then we get into Temple coming to town to play the Oklahoma Sooners on Friday, kind of give a little bit of a breakdown on that, and we also kind of give a little bit of our predictions for that game as well. So a ton to get to with Parker Thune, and I'm very excited for you guys to see that. Before we get to that interview, I want to let everybody know we do have a merch shop, so you can check that link in the description. If you want to go check out all the Sooner Spotlight merch, all of the proceeds go directly to this podcast and the production of this podcast. So we would greatly appreciate if you guys would go over there and just show some support. There's some Oklahoma-themed merch over there, as well as just specifically Sooner Spotlight. A lot of fun stuff, so go check it out. We've gotten a few orders already from people who saw the merch shop open up, from people that saw it on social media or here on YouTube. So go check that out. That link is in the description down below. But let's go ahead and get into the interview with Parker Thune. Sooner Nation, I want to welcome in a man that needs no introduction to Sooner fans. You know who he is. His name is Parker Thune, over with KREF, one of the best OU insiders. Parker, thank you so much for joining.
Of course, Josh. My pleasure.
Yeah. First, I want to start off by getting some of your thoughts, starting off with some of the news that broke. And, you know, at first, when you first see the headline, might catch a couple of us by surprise, and it is with our running backs coach, Demarco Murray, a legend at Oklahoma. He is now being, has a violation for recruiting, and he's not allowed to be at the game on Friday, which was kind of alarming news, but when we look into it, not as alarming as maybe it sounds from just the headline itself. But kind of tell us about what you know about Demarco Murray, and then, of course, how that impacts Friday night's game.
Yeah, I'm not convinced it impacts Friday night's game at all. I mean, if you can afford to spare an on-field coach for one game, how about a Friday night opener against a team that went 3-9 and scored 14 total points in 3 games against Power 4 competition a year ago? Oklahoma should not struggle in the slightest with Temple, and quite frankly, by the midway point of the third quarter, everybody should be in cool down mode at that point. There's no reason why this game shouldn't be out of hand very quickly. So if you can afford to lose a position coach for a single game, this is about as an opportune a time as there is for Demarco Murray's suspension to occur. Moreover, as far as the recruiting ramifications, very similarly, the Sooners probably would have had single-digit recruits in attendance at this game because it's on a Friday and so many guys are playing high school games on Friday. There are schools in Oklahoma that moved their games to Thursday night to accommodate the Sooners season opener. But as far as the guys that are legitimately on OU's radar, you look at the schedules, a lot of them are playing on Friday night. I know of maybe 3 or 4 that were concretely planning on being on campus for this game. So the consequences are minimal all around for Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, that's what I thought when I saw that, with Demarco Murray being out. For one, you kind of ejected him just for the one game that we're probably least worried about as Sooner fans. And then on top of that, like you mentioned, with all the recruits not being able to show up to the game, I mean, I don't know how many visits you're going to get on a Friday night game anyways, but more or less trying to keep the guys out of the heat and stuff like that, move it over to Friday night when the sun's going down, maybe the heat goes down. But let's go ahead and jump into the depth chart as well. I know, with that first depth chart, a lot of Sooner fans might have been confused because they're not seeing certain guys up towards the top. But something that we shouldn't worry about because it's going to adjust, and it seems like this is more, let's get some young guys in there and get them some playing time. Let's also test certain positions out. Starting off with that depth chart, I mean, what kind of stands out to you?
Well, I'll tell you what stands out right off the bat when you start to look through it. Brennan Thompson being listed as a co-starter alongside Nick Anderson took a lot of people by surprise. But this is why I would encourage everybody to go sign up over at OUinsider.com for just a few bucks a month to get premium intel on the team, on OU football recruiting, on a variety of OU athletics, but football and recruiting is really the bulk of the work we do. And for those that had been paying attention to what we've been reporting behind the paywall to members over at OUinsider.com, it was no secret that Brennan Thompson had made a big jump and that he was poised to take on a greater role. And a role that wasn't exclusive to the deep threat chasm that he filled in Oklahoma's offense a year ago. You knew when Brennan Thompson stepped on the field a year ago that he was going deep, and it was difficult enough to stop then. How much more difficult is it going to be for opposing defenses to contend with Brennan Thompson if he has indeed mastered the route tree and can be a weapon at all 3 levels for Oklahoma? Then obviously Jaden Jackson's the toast of the town. I mean, first true freshman to start at defensive tackle for Oklahoma in an opener since Tommy Harris in 2001. So you're in rarefied air. In the post-Bob Stoops era, in the last 8 years at Oklahoma, there are only 3 other guys, period, that have started as true freshmen in week 1. The other 3 are Billy Bowman, CeeDee Lamb, and Kenneth Murray. So again, elite company. Jaden Jackson's going to be dang good. And what I try to remind everybody this time of year, especially when we get a first look at the depth chart, is that there are only so many slots on a depth chart. And the brutal reality is that not everybody on this roster is going to make it at the University of Oklahoma. Now, what that means is, yes, there are going to be some players that get shuffled down the list. There's some players that are going to get left off the list. In some cases, that may be highly indicative. In some cases, it may not be at all. For instance, just because you don't see a guy like Nigel Smith listed on the inaugural depth chart does not mean that after 7 months on campus, time to give up on the Nigel Smith experiment. No, he's a freshman. A lot of these guys are going to come along at a slow developmental curve, and they're not going to be rushed to get ready because of the depth that Oklahoma has on both sides of the ball. So that is the reminder that I issue to everybody this time of year is just because you don't see a guy, just because you're not hearing good things about a guy, doesn't mean he's a lost cause. 3 weeks of practice in August prior to the season is not always deterministic of what type of career a guy is or is not going to have at Oklahoma. So take it all with a grain of salt, but definitely an encouragement to see guys like Brennan Thompson and Jaden Jackson making moves up the depth chart.
Yeah, especially, we talked about Brennan Thompson and what we saw from him last year. Like you said, being able to blow the top off a defense and showing that speed as a young guy, him stepping in right now is really crucial too, with a couple of bang ups in the wide receiver room. I know Andrel Anthony, Jalil Farouk both looking good now, and then of course you had Jaden Gibson announced that he would have a season-ending injury. So with a little bit of a scare, at the very least, in the wide receiver room, you love to see the depth there, especially with some of these young guys. And I know one guy that was kind of surprising to me that wasn't even on the depth chart, but maybe that's a good thing. Zion Reagans and some of the things that we've heard about him.
Yeah, I think they're trying to keep him under wraps as much as possible, and I don't think you mind that if you're an Oklahoma fan,
no,
because
not at all.
there will come a point in time this year at which Zion Reagans will see the field, and everyone will immediately see with their own two eyes why Emmett Jones was willing to go outside his wheelhouse to the state of Georgia to make a hard push, recruit that kid, and ultimately land him. And it is because he has truly elite speed. Everybody sees Brennan Thompson as the speed demon on this roster, and that's true. He's incredibly fast. Zion Reagans might be even faster. There's a conversation to be had there. So they are the same. You basically got two of the same guy on your roster, in the sense that you have two dudes that every single time they run down the field, you better be ready, because if you don't react quickly enough, you can forget it. Once they get going, they're going to leave you in their dust. And that's what's really exciting, I think, about the future of this Oklahoma wide receiver room, is that Emmett Jones has recruited so many different genotypes, so many guys whose skill sets complement one another, who bring something unique to the room. And yes, 2024 offers so much excitement when you look at the wide receiver stable, guys that have done it before at the collegiate level, whether at Oklahoma, i.e. Andrel Anthony, Jalil Farouk, Nick Anderson, or elsewhere, i.e. Deion Burks. But in 2025 and beyond, trust me, if there's a drop-off, there won't be much of one, just because Jones has structured his room such that you're going to have the cupboard refilling itself, in essence. As one guy moves along to the next level, another guy's going to be on the come up.
Yeah, and I've even compared it a little bit to how you've seen Ohio State be able to replace guys year after year. The way that they have guys that are so deep that they go off. I'm drawing a blank, but having guys go off to Alabama to be a starter. So you've got guys deep this year, and that's definitely something that shows much more this year, even with some of the transfers and things like that we've gotten. With guys like Andrel Anthony and getting Deion coming over and kind of filling in that role that Stoops would have played last year. And so definitely some aspects over there in that wide receiver room that I'm very happy to see, especially with a young quarterback. But kind of going on to this Friday night, again, kind of an odd timing for an opening game. You've got an opening game on a Friday night under the lights. It's going to be an electric atmosphere because it's the first time that we see Oklahoma come in as an SEC team playing on the field with those SEC logos on the field. Let's start off over on the offense, because obviously, like we mentioned, we're not really worried about Temple at all. We're 42.5-point favorites last time I checked, so you would expect Oklahoma to come away with this just fine. And you brought it up a minute ago too, that probably going to see quite a few backups playing here pretty quickly in the game too. So going into this, starting on the offensive side of the ball, what should Oklahoma fans expect to see, and what do they want to see when we go against a team like Temple here at home in Week 1?
I mean, I don't put a whole lot of stock into what people want to see, because you ask 100 different people, you're going to get 100 different answers. Everybody has their idea of how offense should be played at the University of Oklahoma, or what Seth Luttrell should show out of his playbook in Week 1 against Temple. But at the end of the day, for the last quarter century at Oklahoma, offense, no matter who has been the play caller, the quarterback, the offensive line coach, you look at the key cogs and whoever has filled those roles in years past, it hasn't changed the fundamental nature of what we know Oklahoma offense in the 21st century to be, which is prolific, whether that be in a run-heavy sense or in a pass-heavy sense. Historically, the majority of Oklahoma offenses in the 21st century have favored the run, and I expect that to continue in 2024. What I want to see, and what I think you need to see from this Oklahoma offense on Friday night, is you want to see those two backs atop the depth chart, Gavin Sawchuk and Javonte Barnes, get off to a good start, get what they should get against a defensive front like Temple's. You want to see that offensive line mesh and be able to consistently get a push up front, because that's the one unit that I think folks have the most questions that are swirling about. But all in all, although I do feel like the run game needs to take precedent for Oklahoma, and while that does need to be the main focus Friday night, just establishing some momentum and a sense of confidence in your rushing offense, what I think the only thing you should care about seeing is an offense that moves the ball exactly how they ought to move the ball against a defense that is not at all equipped to go toe-to-toe with them in any facet of the game. So as long as they are moving the ball down the field, finishing drives with touchdowns, you're going to get my stamp of approval Friday night.
Yeah, definitely. And it's definitely one that if you see little bits of struggles, I think early in the game, you might be able to write that off a little bit. First time getting out there, get some of those jitters out. But you don't want to see something similar to, like, I would compare to what maybe SMU saw, where they really struggled and it just kind of carried through. Definitely something that you want to see eventually get fluidity. Eventually be able to work it down the field just fine. But I would expect on the other side too that a lot of Sooner fans would be pretty upset, even if they did see those early jitters kind of working their way through early in the game. But jumping over to the defensive side of the ball, what do we kind of expect from the defense here against a team like Temple?
Well, conversely, I don't think Temple should be able to run the ball at all Friday. I mean, that would be pretty inexcusable if obviously, there is a natural discrepancy in the overall talent level between Oklahoma's roster and Temple's roster. Everybody understands that. But if that Oklahoma defensive line is what they've been touted to be going into this season, if they're all that they're cracked up to be, with the experience and the sheer physical gifts that some of those guys have up front, the ability, the depth, if that defensive line is what we expect they are capable of being in 2024, Temple should not be able to move the ball on the ground at all. And so from that standpoint, I think, and look, I don't think it's out of the question that Temple manages a big play or two via the pass game, because you are going to be working out some kinks in week one. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be a finished product. There will be guys that miss assignments or that blow coverages, and it shouldn't cost you in the sense that, a blown coverage against Temple probably goes for a 25, 30-yard gain, whereas the same blown coverage against Tennessee might go for a 75-yard touchdown. So I don't know if you'll really feel it on Friday night if those things happen, but all in all, man, to me, all you want to see from this Oklahoma defense is a unit that takes care of business commensurate with expectation. I think expectation should be, again, you look at what Temple did last year, or rather didn't do against Power 5 competition. If that program manages more than 2 scoring drives on Friday night, I would be very, very surprised. So hold your ground up front, keep them out of opposing territory, and you're going to win the game. You're going to win the game by a wide margin. So everybody is going to find any reason to nitpick your performance in the aftermath because it's a game you're expected to win handily. But I also just really want to see what some of these young freshman pieces have for Oklahoma in 2024, and how many of these guys are ready to make a meaningful contribution, not just in non-con, but once you get to SEC play. I think you'll see quite a bit of Michael Boganowski on Friday night. I think you'll see quite a bit of Eli Bowen, and even some of those guys that didn't see a whole lot of run last year as true freshmen, but are entering their redshirt freshman or sophomore year in some cases, and that haven't played a ton of football at OU, at least on defense yet. Samuel Masigo and Lewis Carter come to mind. What do you get out of those guys in terms of individual performance that leads you to believe that they can be a cornerstone contributor and make a strong case for more snaps as you get closer and closer to the gauntlet that is that SEC slate?
Yeah, absolutely. And you said it best too, just focusing on that run defense, because I think the biggest thing that I think SEC fans kind of tout over themselves is that they're very good in the trenches, especially first SEC opponent, going against a Tennessee team. They're in Norman, who is very good on offensive line, but their defensive line is one of the best in the SEC, one of the best in the nation. So trying to stand up with those SEC opponents, I guess, how ready do you feel? I know you've been around the atmosphere there in practices and stuff like that much more than I've been able to. So kind of tell Oklahoma fans, how does it feel in the atmosphere? Do you feel like they're ready for the SEC?
I do feel like this is a program that's ready for the SEC, and that has a lot to do with this defense and what they're going to be, what I expect that they're capable of in 2024. Because, again, you never really question that the offense at Oklahoma is going to be able to put up points. But so much in years past with regard to Oklahoma's championship viability boils down to whether or not the defense has its act together. And the early impression that I get is that this is going to be the best defense you've seen at Oklahoma in a long, long time, a decade plus, easily, because they finally have all of the pieces in the defensive backfield to give some of those variegated, complex, intricate looks that Brent Venables thrives on and has historically thrived on at Clemson. They're obviously going to have one of the best linebacker groups in the nation. And again, if that defensive line gets some of the individual performances that they ought to get season long out of guys like Dominic Williams and Caden Woolard and Dejon Terry, Ethan Downs, maybe you get a breakout campaign from a guy like PJ Adibawara or even Danny Okoye, that's going to go a long, long way towards making this defense one of the most fearsome units in the country. And I do think that's the ceiling. While I wouldn't necessarily place that expectation upon them yet, again, the pieces are all there. And so if you trust the coaches, and to me, there's no reason not to trust maybe the most decorated defensive football coach that the collegiate game has seen in the last 3 decades, then I think you ought to trust that this defense is going to do great things in 2024. Whether that means being a top 5 unit in the SEC or being a top 5 unit in the country remains to be seen, but they're not going to be a liability, and they're not just going to be a middle-of-the-road unit.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you're much of a betting man, but what about a score prediction here for Oklahoma Temple in Week 1 here this upcoming Friday?
Yeah, my score prediction was Oklahoma 52, Temple 3. I'll give the Owls a field goal. It feels cruel to predict that Oklahoma will shut out a team or that anybody will shut out a team. But I do think it's very much within the realm of possibility that Temple does not score on Friday night. So I've got the Sooners 52-3, so that's a win and a cover if you want to play that in Vegas.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was the next thing I was going to mention to you is you definitely have them covering that 42 points. It feels like they ought to. But Parker, I appreciate you so much for coming on. Let everybody know where to find your stuff if they don't already know.
Yeah, again, folks, OUinsider.com is where you can find my work and the works of my outstanding colleagues, Brandon Drum, Jesse Crittenden, Brian Clinton, and Brody Lusk, the latter of whom is the premier basketball insider in this market. Now, much of our content is free, a lot of free reads, a lot of free analysis over there for you at OUinsider.com. But believe me, the real good stuff is behind the paywall. It'll cost you $8 a month. That's virtually nothing. $8 a month to get all access behind the paywall at OUinsider.com to all the information, intel, recruiting notes, and all the rest that we're throwing out there on a daily basis for you, Sooner fans.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Parker, once again, thank you so much for coming on.
No problem, Josh. Take it easy.
Hey Sooner fans, did you enjoy this video? Well, go ahead and hit that like button and go ahead and hit that subscribe button. What are you doing if you've made it this far and haven't already? You should be able to find that subscribe button over here. And then if you want to see full episodes, we've got those up here and clips right down here. So go check that out. But we thank you all so much for all the love, all the support. We'll catch you next time. Boomer.